Genius Warlock. Chapter 311. Gurgle Gurgle. In the forsaken sewer of Landa, Big Mouth, the creature summoned by Oliver, eyed him with distrust, contempt, and disgust. Despite Oliver's numerous explanations that the recent fight with a new glutton bag was necessary, Big Mouth remained unhappy and wouldn't let it go. Consequently, every time Oliver sought Big Mouth's assistance, he had to pay twice the amount he initially gave. It seemed he had made a mistake. Had he known this would happen, he would have engaged 2 glutton bags instead of 1 in the fight. Determined not to repeat the same mistake, Oliver brewed coffee with a camping pot beside Big Mouth. "Are you a glutton bag user?" inquired Elizabeth Una, the female warlock who had attacked Oliver when he was zen and bright. Una was currently the leader of the surviving Bathory family, sitting alongside Elizabeth Orsho, Elizabeth Kirtland, Elizabeth Undrassi, and Elizabeth Powell, one after the other. "Yes. Big Mouth has been helping me since I started my solver job." "That's impressive. A creature that size would usually devour its master." "People often say that, but it hasn't happened yet. Thankfully, it obeys well." "It seems pretty upset with you, for something that obeys well." "Ah, there have been a few misunderstandings. Would you like some coffee?" Oliver offered, pouring coffee into 6 cups and distributing them among the disciples of Bathory. Only a few minutes ago, they were fighting for their lives, and they now felt an odd fear towards Oliver's behavior, finding it grotesquely incongruous as if they were facing a creature they couldn't comprehend. "Ah! Can you not drink coffee?" asked Oliver, suddenly realizing that they were half dead, almost like revenants. The Bathory disciples he had fought against in Mountain Pace were all revenants, their hearts torn out. Una narrowed her eyes, perhaps finding the question impolite. "Ah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. We need to consume blood regularly, but that doesn't mean we can't eat food." "Ah, I see." Oliver's interest piqued at the trivial yet intriguing piece of information, displaying the curiosity of a passionate scholar. "Well then, do you go to the bathroom?" "Shut up! Are you mocking us?" Una's embarrassment, humiliation, and anger were evident. "No, not at all. I'm just genuinely curious." "I'll shut up now." Belatedly realizing his mistake, Oliver apologized. Thankfully, they didn't engage in further argument. An awkward silence fell upon them. In an attempt to apologize, Oliver called on Big Mouth. "Eeb! Eeb! Eeb! Eeb!" Uttering sounds with his mouth closed, it resembled more of a sob than words, but fortunately, Big Mouth understood and spat out a box, a notebook, and a pen, along with solid fuel and a coffee pot. "Gyuek! Gyuk!" Una glanced sideways at the box, notebook, and pen that landed with a thud. "What's that?" Instead of answering, Oliver scribbled in the notebook with a pen and showed her. "It's a box with fresh blood packs. Just say it with your mouth." "Ah, thank you. Writing in letters is harder than I thought." Observing Oliver's somewhat foolish behavior, Una and her sisters found it absurd. It was hard to believe that this was the same man who had exhibited such admirable magic, black magic, and blood magic. Blood packs? Exactly. As an apology. A whole box of blood packs. Would that suffice? Oliver presented his proposal with utmost courtesy, and from Una's perspective, it was a welcomed suggestion. The situation that Una and her comrades found themselves in was far from enviable. Their resources were dwindling, and their safety was at risk. Despite their abilities that could have afforded them a life of luxury, the constant need to avoid capture imposed limitations. The frequent consumption of blood was an expensive affair, and they were far from content with their circumstances. Given this context, Oliver's gift was undeniably generous. However, they couldn't let themselves get too carried away. This peculiar warlock before them had once been their mother's adversary, and they were well aware that men who showed such acts of kindness were few and far between, at least based on their past experiences before they became the daughters of Bathory. "Your gift is deeply appreciated." "Thank you. I'm glad you think so. But why do you possess such a vast quantity of blood? Is that unusual?" "To be frank, yes. Blood is used in black magic, but it's a difficult substance to handle, so it's not usually stored in large volumes, unless you require a significant amount of it." "You're quite perceptive. May I address your questions about Lady Bathory at a later time? For now, would you mind satisfying my curiosities?" Oliver's request was conveyed with utmost politeness. He had actually expressed a desire to have his questions answered first, as a prize for his victory in the duel, a proposition that Bathory's disciples, including Una, had agreed to. They had been the defeated, and he the victor. In the Warlock Society, this was indeed a magnanimous gesture, something to be grateful for. Oliver began speaking, seeking to ensure he had the right account of events. Lady Bathory travelled to England and then vanished, leading to other Warlock families targeting you, correct? Una nodded to confirm his understanding. And you managed to hold your own, but eventually, you were cornered by an attack from Mr. Human Meat Chef's sibling. His sisters. Pardon. I meant his sister's attack, not the chef himself, but the attack was carried out by the sister of the Human Meat Chef. I see. My apologies for the misunderstanding. But that's intriguing. A warlock with a sister. Oliver's reaction was not uncommon. While rare, it was not entirely unheard of for warlocks to have siblings. Most warlocks came from the lower strata of society, where blood relatives were uncommon due to the harsh and self-centered nature of the black magic world, making it challenging to maintain sibling relationships. Is she also a finger? She believes she is, and some others do too, but no. Our mother dismissed her as a brash girl who wielded too much power due to Chef. Is that so? To the best of my knowledge. But isn't she a formidable adversary, having single-handedly driven you to a corner despite your victories against numerous other families? While Oliver's question wasn't intended to provoke them, Una and her sisters couldn't help but feel uneasy, regardless of his intentions. Just because she isn't a finger doesn't mean she's weak. She's a warlock who has lived for centuries alongside Chef, and recently, she has gained power by consuming the remains of a wizard king. A wizard king? Yes, even though he was a warlock, he was wholly absorbed in magic. Oh. She may not be a finger, but we cannot deny that she is equally strong. According to rumors, her power is even stronger than Chef. Oliver was about to inquire further about the finger's allegiance but decided against it. The organization known as the Black Hand was so secretive that accurate information was hard to come by, and there were often contradictory stories. Just the revelation of Human Meat Chef having a sister was a significant discovery. You must have had a hard time. So, did you come to Landa to find Lady Bathory and avoid tracking and attacks? Una nodded slowly. Of the two reasons, the latter was the more pressing concern. Observing Una's emotions, Oliver muttered, I see. Is that all you wanted to know? Bathory's disciple, Una, asked. While Oliver had many more questions, he nodded for now. He had learned about their situation and their reasons for being in Landa. To hear a more detailed answer, he needed to stop here. Yes. So, can you answer our questions now? Una, despite being a defeated warlock, demanded an answer with an unusual assertiveness. Although it was the agreed-upon arrangement, the situation felt peculiar. In the world of warlocks, winning or losing often meant a winner-takes-all scenario that included life itself. However, the man before her didn't seem bound by these typical rules, which both intrigued and unsettled her. Yes, ask your question. Do you know where our mother is? Well, I suppose you could say I know. Then, can you tell me where she is? Of course, I can tell you. In fact, I can arrange for you to meet her. Caught off guard by the unexpected response, Una's eyes widened with suspicion and anxiety. You can arrange for us to meet her. Yes. However, I would like to ask one favor of you. What is it? Don't get angry. Everyone, including Una, felt a strange and ominous feeling at the mysterious request, unable to comprehend its purpose. A profound sense of impending doom enveloped them. I'll try. That's enough. Big Mouth. Could you give me a hand? At Oliver's request, Big Mouth, who was sitting nearby, sprang up, seemingly aware of when it was appropriate to act sulky or not. Big Mouth approached, and Oliver took out a test tube containing child first. Keek. Big Mouth retrieved the corpse doll Bathory. Oliver opened the test tube and inserted first into the corpse doll Bathory, standing it up. Here's Lady Bathory. While Oliver turned around to speak, Bathory's disciple Una, consumed by anger, lunged with sharp fingernails towards Oliver. Her body moved before her mind could fully process the action. Fortunately, first, now inside the corpse doll Bathory, was quicker than her. Swoosh bang! First moved skillfully and intercepted Una's attack, just as Oliver intended, not too forcefully, but enough to stop a severe fight from breaking out. The other disciples, excluding Una, were unable to accept the sight before them and refrained from acting recklessly. After all, the revelation that the being they referred to as mother had become a solver's corpse doll was shocking enough. It was enough to incite anger and frustration. However, Oliver was determined to continue the conversation, so he swiftly moved on to his next action. "What are you doing? Kill that bastard immediately." Blood web. Oliver quickly manipulated the blood he had previously placed, ensnaring them once again with a spider web made of blood. This was why they couldn't attack even when Oliver had apparent vulnerabilities, such as when he was preparing coffee or talking. They found themselves trapped like mosquitoes in a spider's web. "Everyone, please calm down. Kia hiya 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 hiya. You son of a bitch. You fucker. I'll kill you. I'll skin you, gouge out your eyes, and disembowel you. Kia hiya hiya hiya." Una, who had previously been composed and rational, now spat out curses as if she had transformed into a completely different person. The anger and sorrow she displayed were enough to consume even her sanity. Her facial muscles and tendons were grotesquely highlighted, and her canines grew like a beast's, much like the other disciples of Bathory that Oliver had encountered at Mountain Pace. "It's amazing." After enduring minutes of curses, Oliver suddenly remarked, "I don't know what it's like to have a mother, but it seems like you all truly think of her as your mother." Oliver observed the last 5 disciples of Bathory, each crying without tears. Una, who had earlier cursed vehemently, replied, "She gave us a second life. She is our mother." Oliver could grasp the sentiment behind her words. Based on Bathory's past remarks, despite them being half dead in a hospice, and by recalling memories of Joseph, Oliver's master, Bathory must have indeed helped them. And it was from this act of grace that she likely nurtured loyal disciples who saw her as their mother. Is the idea of sharing her surname also part of this concept? Nevertheless, regardless of this sentiment, Bathory did not view her disciples as anything more than useful tools, similar to how other warlocks saw their disciples. In fact, when Oliver and Wiles killed many of her disciples, Bathory felt more regret than sadness. It was the regret of losing useful tools. Oliver contemplated sharing this fact with them but decided to postpone it. Something else was bothering him. Instead, he tried to calm them down. "Well, I initially suggested to Lady Bathory not to fight and to part ways peacefully. I proposed reconciliation several times during the fight. But Lady Bathory refused." "So what? Are you saying you had no choice?" "To be honest, yes. I didn't want to die then, and I don't want to die now. Can you understand? I had to harm Lady Bathory in order to survive." Oliver, who had killed their mother, asked for their understanding, a sight that might have even shocked hardened gangsters. Yet, Oliver was sincere. He wanted to have more conversations with them, and he didn't want to harm them any more than necessary. "Why don't you want to hurt us? You also hurt our mother." "True, I did harbor some resentment towards Lady Bathory. But I didn't target her from the start. And I don't hold any personal feelings towards all of you." "I certainly do." Their conversation and emotions clashed dramatically. Una felt the suffocating and frustrating feeling of her head and chest about to burst. "Well, can't you still understand? Didn't you come to Landa not only to find Lady Bathory but also to protect your remaining colleagues?" Oliver could see through the emotions of Una and the others. Una felt responsible for the 4 female warlocks, Orsho, Kirtlin, Undrasi, and Pal. In turn, Orsho, Kirtlin, Undrasi, and Pal trusted and believed in Una. Una couldn't confirm whether Oliver's perception was entirely accurate, but it held some truth. She cared about her colleagues' safety as much as she sought revenge. While Bathory may have referred to her disciples as daughters merely as a ploy, they considered each other real sisters. It was an intriguing dynamic. "What do you want from us? I'll help you settle in Landa. Can you agree to make peace with me for a while? Just for at least a year." Oliver made a truly preposterous proposal. Chapter 312. "Please sign here." A female real estate agent from District O pointed out the spot for signature on the document. As one of the rare female professionals in Landa, she had not survived in this business casually. She was kind, charming, yet flawless. A strength different from physical power. After completing his observations, Oliver complied with her request, signed where indicated, and extended a case bag filled with cash. Click. When the real estate agent opened the bag, the crisp sound accompanied the sight of pristine high-denomination bills. It was a special fee that included a year's advance rent for the house, the deposit, the brokerage fee for the real estate agent, and other costs related to maintaining secrecy. As everyone in Landa did, she received the large sum of money with a gleaming smile. Thank you. The house is yours for the next year. Thank you once again for a clean transaction. No, thank you. Oliver had become accustomed to life in Landa. He handled the paperwork with more proficiency than when he had first rented his place. The real estate agent, satisfied with the clean transaction, handed over the property and left the house after politely saying goodbye to Oliver and the group behind him. Thud. Here are the keys. As soon as the female agent left, Oliver extended a bunch of house keys to Una. You can easily duplicate the keys according to the number of people. Una, still seeming to find the situation surreal, hesitated before accepting the keys. She was questioning and wondering if she was doing the right thing. Regardless, Oliver said what he wanted to say. District O is quite a nice place to live, although it's a bit risky. Security and convenience facilities are pretty good. Above all, it's good for privacy protection. All he said was true. This house was one of the many options he had considered when he was choosing a place to live. The house was large, had a basement, was soundproofed, and it was set some distance from the neighboring houses, which made it advantageous for maintaining privacy. Una nodded in agreement on this point. Ah! After explaining about the house, Oliver seemed to ponder for a moment before pulling out a red notebook and a wallet-sized money pouch from his bag. Is this, Mother's? You recognized it? It's Lady Bathory's notebook. It seems to be a list of clients. Upon seeing what could be considered Bathory's relics, Una and the other disciples were momentarily stirred. However, under Oliver's overwhelming force and bizarre pressure, coupled with the absurdity of receiving help from an enemy, they were all held down and couldn't move. Perhaps it was because of the promise made in the sewer. Could we possibly reconcile for a while? At least for a year. Una had accepted then. Because the outcome was too clear. Of course, they could have chosen death, but it was questionable whether it was right for the Bathory family to vanish futilely in a foreign sewer. Wasn't it over when one died? Just the end. So, Una had accepted the one-year reconciliation, as unpleasant and grotesque as it was. I put some money in this pouch. It should be enough for living expenses for a year. Do you have any questions? Looking at her enemy who was speaking politely as if nothing had happened, Una turned her head towards her sisters. Go upstairs to the bedroom for a moment. Hey? But, Una. I said go up. The sisters, under the firm command of their current leader, Una, went upstairs. They were uneasy, but they did not harbor any complaints. Watching them, Oliver spoke. Everyone seems to have tremendous faith in you, Miss Una. Is there a problem? Una exuded an aura of vigilance and hostility. It was understandable. Whatever happened, Oliver was the enemy. They had agreed to reconcile for a year, but it was hard to completely eradicate hostility. No. Just that it's impressive. Normally, even if Warlock families appear to get along well, they don't really, right? But you guys are different. That's a bit surprising and impressive. Una, remaining on guard, didn't respond at all. The silence was awkward, and Oliver was slowly starting to pull back, preparing to part ways, when suddenly, Una slowly opened her mouth. We're sisters, after all, having the same mother. Ah. You mean Lady Bathory? Una nodded. She sincerely thought of Bathory as her mother. Oliver once again pondered whether to talk about how Bathory only saw them as useful tools. He was very curious about their opinions and feelings on this matter. However, he also had a feeling that maybe it was a little inappropriate. Do you have something to say? Hey? Oh, yes. How did you know? I'm a warlock too. Your emotions are very weak, so it's hard to distinguish. Ah. There is something I want to say, as you guessed. However, it might be rude. Maybe. Una hesitated a bit before telling him to go ahead, trying to gauge Oliver. Well. It seems that you and others cherish Lady Bathory, but do you know that she doesn't actually feel the same? She calls you her daughters, but she sees you like how other warlocks see their disciples. In other words, she sees them as her property or tools. However, Una showed no particular reaction. Not because she didn't understand, but because she knew. You knew. I've been serving her for a long time. She was surprisingly calm. But why? Am I following her? Oliver nodded. The anger she showed when he showed her Bathory made as a corpse doll was real. Strong emotions that consumed reason. And yet, she knew Bathory saw them as tools. It was interesting. Most of my sisters and I are abandoned beings. We're also women in the lower class. Oliver nodded. He roughly knew how hard it would be to be a woman in poverty and in the lower class. He'd seen it in the orphanage. Most of us almost died. No, we did die. Miserably and like trash. The only one who helped us then was our mother. Lady Bathory. Yes. She gave us a second, albeit unstable, life, she taught us, she gave us a better life and sisters. Even if she saw us as tools, that fact won't disappear. Ah! Oliver could understand. Regardless of Bathory's motive, the undeniable fact was that she had helped them. That's why their relationship with Bathory was both false and true. Oliver nodded and apologized again, with more sincerity this time. I'm really sorry about Lady Bathory. Una said nothing. The situation was not good, and they had formed a crazy reconciliation relationship for a year, but it was proof that she hadn't yet forgiven him. He had no particular complaints. After all, Oliver was the one who suggested it and wanted it. Then Una opened her mouth. Can I ask a question too? Please go ahead. Why are you helping us like this? It seems like you spent quite a lot of money. She was right. He rented this house, spent an amount unimaginable to Oliver of 2 or 3 years ago on living expenses. I like you guys. What did you say? Una, who was trying hard to remain calm, furrowed her brows in discomfort. Aren't you on good terms with your sisters? It's not easy for a warlock family to be like that. I find it interesting and pleasing to watch. Una focused her attention on Oliver's eyes to determine whether he was being sincere or mocking. Oliver continued to explain as if to prove he was not mocking. Of course, I spent a considerable amount of money, but my recent earnings have been good enough to afford it. Also, I have many things to ask you. There's no other way to get news from across the sea other than newspapers. You want to use us as your source of information. We have no choice but to answer. We've received your help, so... No. That's not it. I'd be grateful if you could answer, but you don't have to force yourself. Helping you like this is a sign of my apology for a year of reconciliation, even though I didn't intend it, but I did kill Lady Bathory. The muscles and tendons on Una's face became slightly more prominent. Then, do I not have to answer your questions? How about we help each other as needed? If you help me with my questions, I will help you. Oliver sincerely rambled about this crazy talk, not knowing where to begin. Una didn't know what to say, and Oliver stood up from his seat. For now, I'll take my leave for today. I'll visit from time to time, so let me know if you need anything. Oh, and I would appreciate it if you could keep your promise with me. The promise was a reasonable one, to not attack him for at least a year and not do anything that would be harmful to Landa. He made it a condition that he would kill them all if they violated it, and Una accepted it. May I ask one more thing? What is it? Do you think you can subjugate us and keep us below you? Una asked after much thought. There were times when one would control other warlocks with their power, wealth, and charisma. Oliver responded with all sincerity. No. Not at all. I would also prefer it didn't happen. I really mean it. Did you enjoy your vacation? Kevin outright asked Oliver, who had returned to the Magic Tower after a legal 3-day vacation. Yes. I had a good time. Is there anything you need? No. Just asking. There are often accidents during the post-final party, so I just asked in case. Oh. Don't worry. I didn't get invited to such places. There are also thieves, petty thieves, swindlers who target awkward-looking officials of the Magic Tower. Besides, I feel like you would step into such places out of curiosity. Kevin had Oliver figured out. Although the circumstances were different, Oliver had once encountered a thief. I'll be careful. Yeah, you should be. The summer semester is about to start. Yes, I'll keep that in mind. By the way, is there anything I need to do? There is. For now, sort these until lunchtime. Kevin pointed at the stack of documents piled on his desk. The documents were student information, and there were quite a lot of them. By sorting, do you mean the sorting we did at the beginning of the semester? Yes. Divide them according to their affiliated school of magic, minor schools of magic, and other characteristics. We need to understand the students in order to plan the lessons accordingly. He was right, but a question arose apart from that. Weren't you saying that the summer semester usually has fewer students? Right. But the pile of documents there seems to be quite a lot. Yes, that's right. All the students you were in charge of last semester have reapplied, and other students have added applications as well. I see. I think they have heard some rumors, but regardless, I'm going to proceed in my way. It's not urgent, so sort them out slowly until lunchtime, and follow me in the afternoon. May I ask what it is? I'm thinking of picking a research assistant to help me during the holidays. Come and assist. Chapter 313. My goodness! What did you do? Temporary interview room of the Elemental Magic Tower. Kevin asked, looking at the coffee cup in his hand. Oliver, who brought the coffee, responded. I made some coffee. Kevin looked at Oliver as if he couldn't believe it. You made this? Yes. Did I make a mistake? Kevin shook his head. Not out of courtesy, but genuinely. No, it's just that the coffee tastes better than I expected. Ah, thank you. I learned from some ladies I know, and then I tried adding a few recipes to suit my taste by looking at a book. That's surprising, the fact that you know some ladies and that you have preferences. Kevin spoke sincerely. It was surprising to him that Oliver had personal relationships with women and that he cared about the taste of coffee. This guy, who when busy, simply settled for plain bread. The ladies, I got to know while working, and as for coffee, I also enjoy it occasionally. Wouldn't you want it to be tastier if you could? Tastier. Such a natural desire, yet it felt so alien when Oliver mentioned it. It felt like a wolf or lion seasoning its prey with pepper after hunting. Whether he knew it or not, Oliver asked calmly. Do you need anything else? To Oliver's question, Kevin shook his head. No, just go outside now and bring in the students listed in order. Oliver nodded, collected the list of laboratory applicants, and left the interview room. Outside, there were a chair and desk for Oliver, and across from him, students waiting either sitting or standing were visible. They were all students currently attending the Magic Tower, also applicants for Kevin's laboratory. About 15 or so. Though it might seem like a lot, it wasn't necessarily so. Many students apply to labs to build their career, network, develop their skills, or make money. For popular professors, hundreds apply at once. Compared to that, the number of applications to Kevin wasn't a lot. Well, considering his reputation, it wouldn't be considered few either. Anyway, Oliver sat in the chair and called the students listed one by one. Mr. Jim, are you here? Creak, thud. The fifth applicant opened the door to the interview room and stepped out. His name was Koji, a student from the Gaia School of Magic. Despite preparing confidently by reading potential questions before entering, he came out drained after just a few minutes. Of course, on the outside, he pretended to be fine, but inside, his feelings were a mix of confusion, shock, and self-loathing, as if they were bruises scattered here and there. Just like the four before him. Oliver looked at Koji, who was walking more slowly than before, thought this, and called the next person. An unexpected one. Mr. Derek, are you here? In response to Oliver's call, Derek, who had been hiding amongst the crowd, slowly rose and walked forward. The few applicants blocking the narrow hallway gave way when they saw Derek's face. Thump. 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 Derek walked confidently, making heavy footsteps, and stopped in front of Oliver. You don't seem surprised. I was surprised when I first saw you. Sitting in his chair. After calling the first person, Oliver reviewed the list, and while observing the applicants with his warlock's eye, he noticed Derek and Felix. It was somewhat surprising to see Derek there, even if Felix was expected. Hiding among the applicants. Isn't there a list? Derek nodded, as if convinced. To him, Oliver spoke politely. You may go in now, Mr. Derek. Derek nodded as if he understood, and followed Oliver's words into the interview room. His attitude seemed a lot softer than when they first met. Thud. As Derek closed the interview room door and stepped inside, the interview began immediately. Although it was impossible to know what conversations were taking place inside the interview room with a soundproof magic applied, Oliver, with his warlock's eyes, could glimpse the emotions of the two people in the back interview room. The warlock's eyes could see in all directions, not just forward, depending on the training. Fortunately, it seemed that the conversation was going quite well, perhaps thanks to Derek having once attended Kevin's class. Kevin's emotions were not stained with disappointment, and Derek's emotions, which were consistent with his confidence, were proof of that. Well, he's a good student. He seems to have completely regained his confidence. Did something happen? Oliver wondered while focusing on his own work. Fortunately, the waiting research applicants were chatting with each other, satisfying Oliver's curiosity. Derek. So, did he finally get kicked out of the family? Aren't you supposed to help with family business or research? I don't think he got kicked out. His tuition and dormitory fees are still being paid by his family. But it seems that they have cut back a bit on non-essentials. They say the Redhill family is having financial difficulties these days. Because of the failed investment in thermal power. So, is Derek's situation desperate? SHH, be careful. They say that Derek beat up the guys who were gossiping about him at the end-of-term party. He took down over 10 guys by himself. They say it was 20, actually. Whether it's 10 or 20, be careful if you don't want to be humiliated. His temper seems to be the same as always. It seemed that Derek's self-esteem had been restored by confirming his own capabilities. It seemed fortunate. Having the confidence to do something was a good thing. In addition to this, Oliver secretly heard other stories, most of which were about money. Even though all the applicants here were students. How can he put it? Despite their affluence, the wizards seemed to be impoverished. Thud. A little later, Derek opened the door and came out of the interview room. He was the first to come out, maintaining his confidence, not just in appearance, but also in heart. He made eye contact with Oliver and waved a greeting before leaving, and Oliver likewise greeted him and called the next candidate. The next candidate was also familiar. Mr. Felix, are you here? As they finished interviewing the last, 18th candidate, the afternoon time had almost flown by. They would probably have to continue categorizing summer semester students until tomorrow. There was no need to regret since the schedule was not urgent yet. Oliver helped Kevin tidy up the interview room a bit and packed his stuff. You've worked hard, Professor. I've packed everything. Oliver slung the bag containing the documents over one shoulder and said. Good job. Then, let's go. Oliver moved in step with Kevin's pace. Oliver pierced through Kevin's emotions and asked. Are you very disappointed with the interviews? Honestly, a bit. Kevin responded naturally. Well, I'm not terribly disappointed. You're talking about Derek and Felix. How did you know? I have pretty good eyesight. Kevin nodded, reminded once again that Oliver was a warlock. Sure, Derek and Felix were all right, I guess. At least they read my paper and knew what I was trying to study. At least it wasn't a waste of time today. I thought only fools applied. Congratulations. But may I ask why you're suddenly recruiting researchers? I thought you planned to do research alone during the vacation. Well, that was the original plan. But the situation has changed. The situation? Yes, if I hire students, I get more research funds. It's indirect financial support. Also, I can benefit in terms of lab rankings. Ah. So it's good to hire more. While that's true, I'm going to hire only the minimum number of people. If I hire too many, inefficiencies will occur, and it's not good for safety either. Oliver could roughly understand what Kevin was saying. Hiring students for the lab was a matter that required more careful handling than he thought. It was not just about research efficiency or financial issues, but also for safety. This was because there were quite a few cases where some of the students employed in the lab would embezzle research data for the benefit of other professors or for personal monetary gain. This fact was recorded in the diary of the Lightning Wizard and the Research Journal of Audrey as one of the backdoor businesses in the Magic Tower. Outstanding magic research was worth that much. Remembering that fact, Oliver slightly tilted his head. Then, wouldn't it have been better not to hire anyone at all? Looking at it comprehensively. Not necessarily. Contrary to the original plan, I ended up taking on work like summer courses, and if I want to produce results within the deadline, I need manpower to do simple tasks. Ah! Oliver suddenly realized that Kevin had taken on a summer course he hadn't planned on because of him. I'm sorry, Professor. I apologize. It's okay. I'm not the type to only engage in losing deals. By the way, how's your schedule afterward? Oliver checked his watch before answering. It's currently 3:54. I plan to finish the student categorization work I took on in the morning and leave work by 6 p.m. Do you have anything scheduled after that? Yes, I have personal matters from 8:30 p.m. This was not a lie. Recently, he had been teaching the fighter crew in District X again. Currently, Oliver was teaching the basics of black magic to the new fighter crew members, and giving basic education for fostering warlocks to 36 fighter crew executives. In addition, he was conducting basic physical training through pre-made assessment forms and teaching them to read and write for their development, but he didn't need to worry about that because Joe and Al were helping. From 8:30 p.m.? May I ask what it is? Responding to Kevin's question, Oliver carefully answered. It's not a big secret, but I would prefer not to disclose it as it involves personal matters. I've felt this way for a long time, but you tend to ask a lot while keeping your own matters secret. I'm sorry if you felt that way. It's just that it's not just about me, but it involves other people as well. I'm not convinced, but considering my regrettable position, I'll let it pass. Regrettable? Do you remember the deal we made last time? Oliver remembered the strange deal he made with Kevin very well. In exchange for teaching Kevin black magic that can fuse mana with emotions, Kevin would answer Oliver's personal questions. Nodding his head at Oliver's agreement, Kevin answered. From today on, teach me steadily, even if it's just 1 or 2 hours a day. The paperwork is not urgent, so take your time. Oliver looked at the clock. The clock pointed to exactly 4 o'clock. How about having an early dinner and starting right away? I think I can spare time until 7 or 7:30 p.m. Oliver proposed without considering his own rest time. It was time that could be used or not. Kevin was pleased with Oliver's surprisingly proactive attitude, though he didn't show it. Is that okay? Yes, I want to do it properly if I'm going to do it. Is it okay with you, Professor? It's fine. Then, let's go home right away, have a light meal at a restaurant, and go to my house. Your house, Professor? We can't train at the Magic Tower. Ah! Oliver exclaimed at the obvious fact. Don't worry, I have a training ground at my house. You have a training ground at your house. I'm a professor at the Magic Tower. I have that much property. Ah! I see. But what are we going to start training with first? I'll start with a test and then simple training. Oliver answered calmly, and about an hour later, Oliver forcibly inserted emotions into Kevin's eyes. Kevin groaned in pain. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr Chapter 314. Exactly 1 hour ago, at 4 p.m. At the end of his conversation with Kevin, Oliver had an early dinner at a restaurant near the tower. As a steak specialty restaurant, it was expensive, but the taste was excellent. After the meal, Oliver arrived at Kevin's mansion, located in the upscale residential area, District I. He immediately conducted a light test in the training ground prepared in the basement. It was to check whether Kevin had any talent for black magic. Surprisingly, or rather unsurprisingly, Kevin didn't have any particular talent for black magic. It wasn't particularly strange. After all, Merlin had once said that magic and black magic were completely different. Magic is like mathematics. It applies formulas according to certain rules to exert the desired power. Of course, an experienced wizard changes the form of the formula to suit his own convenience, but the basic rules are the same. It doesn't break the laws. I am no exception. Black magic is closer to art than mathematics. It has a shorter history than magic, and perhaps because there has been no systematic research, an experienced warlock often creates his own unique black magic. There are many things that break the rules. Two disciplines, similar yet different. Naturally, the talents required were different, and Kevin, who had a talent for magic, inevitably had no talent for black magic. Therefore, no matter how much he concentrated on his eyes, he couldn't see emotions. Something's weird, I could clearly see the emotions when you helped me last time, right? You can't see emotions until they're extracted. They only become visible after extraction, just like mana. But the emotion you're holding now is extracted, isn't it? I've manipulated the emotion to be visible only through a warlock's sight, just like before it was extracted. The moment it goes through processing, it immediately reveals its form, which is not very useful in combat, but it's okay for testing purposes. Oliver answered, remembering when he first met Joseph, who conducted a test in front of everyone using a square chocolate. After repeatedly making the manipulated emotion visible and then invisible in front of Kevin's eyes, Oliver proved again that Kevin did not have a talent for black magic. Kevin's expression was not good. But he discovered an interesting fact. Apart from not being able to see it, when the emotion was handed to him, he could lightly handle the emotion. Thanks to the method Oliver had taught him in the past, indirectly helping him get a feel, Kevin was able to control the emotion even though he couldn't see it. In other words, he skipped the basic principle of black magic, opening the eyes, and used handle first. It was quite a haphazard sequence. However, thanks to that, Oliver was able to figure out what to do next. So now he was forcibly stuffing a small amount of extracted emotion into Kevin's eyes. To open the eyes of a warlock. Arg. It was a method first used on James, a subordinate of pharmacist, and later used several times on some of the fighter crew members. James and the members of the fighter crew all flailed and cursed in extreme pain, but Kevin, a former war wizard until recently, gritted his teeth and endured the intense pain assaulting his eyes. The evidence of his strong desire for power. For such Kevin, Oliver focused intensely on his eyes, and quickly but carefully continued to stuff emotions into Kevin's eyes. "You've worked hard, Professor," Oliver said, pulling his hands away from Kevin's eyes. As soon as Oliver's words fell, Kevin covered his eyes and took a deep breath. "Ha! That really hurt." "Yes, it seems so," Oliver replied. He had only tried it, he didn't know how painful it was because he had never been on the receiving end. "Do your eyes still hurt?" At Oliver's question, Kevin nodded and slowly, very slowly, opened his eyes. "Do you know what this is?" Oliver asked, holding up his index finger in front of Kevin's eyes. Kevin, whose focus slowly adjusted, answered. "A circle." "Yes, correct." Oliver, satisfied with the fact that he had succeeded, put the emotion he held back into the test tube. Kevin, who saw the emotion for the first time, gazed into the air for a moment, as if savoring the unfamiliar sight, then opened his mouth. "It's amazing." He was sincere. Kevin was quite amazed and admired. "What do you mean?" "What you've done. I've read the black magic books, records, diaries I acquired during my time as a war wizard, but I've never seen anything like this." "What is the name of this?" "Forcing emotions into the eyes." There is none." "None." "Yes. I once tried it temporarily to teach someone black magic, so I didn't really give it a name." "You mean you created it?" "Yes. It's closer to saying I tried it on a whim than to saying I created something grand." His words were true. The method of opening eyes, to those without talent in black magic could be revolutionary, but for Oliver, it was just a method he had tried on a whim. I'll think about the name later." "Placing emotions in the eyes, how about that?" Astonishing naming sense. There didn't seem to be any consideration. However, apart from that, Kevin was surprised by another fact. "Just out of curiosity, how many times have you tried this?" "About 10 times. Including you, Professor." "You used an untested spell on me." "Yes, I didn't need to use it often." Oliver answered honestly out of respect for Kevin, but Kevin stared at Oliver with wide eyes. It makes sense, the eye is the most important sensory organ of humans. It wasn't strange to be angry because he performed a dangerous, unverified procedure on such a part. If something had gone wrong with Kevin's eyes, what would he have done? But Kevin didn't argue. He had an idea what the warlock in front of him might say. He didn't know if he would punch him if he really heard it. He couldn't afford to waste precious training time like that. After all, he was the one who wanted this power. "Are you okay, Professor? Any problem?" "Ha! I'm fine." "So try again." Oliver immediately extracted the emotions from the test tube and shaped them on the spot. Kevin opened the eyes of the warlock, which he was not yet familiar with. It was blurry, as if wearing the wrong glasses, but he could still see something. "A circle." "Correct. I'll change it once." "Circle again, cylinder, square, spider web, drop shape." Kevin managed to identify all the blurry emotional forms he could see. Oliver complimented him for being great, and Kevin massaged between his eyes. Forcing his eyes open, the warlock's sight was more tiring than he thought. It was admirable how Oliver naturally opened and closed the warlock's eye as if breathing. However, Oliver moved on to the next step unaware of such Kevin's feelings. Do you see over there? Oliver pointed beyond the basement passage door. No, what did you do? Nothing much, I just floated the emotions beyond the door through the shadow. Can you see it? As if to prove his words, Oliver pointed to his own elongated shadow. The shadow that drew a long line along the floor stretched out under the door gap. I can't see anything. As soon as Oliver heard Kevin's answer, his shadow shrank like a snake and returned to its original state. And Oliver went behind Kevin and created an emotional form. Can you see the emotions without turning back? No. My eyes are only fixed in the front. Can you see even if someone's behind? If you focus on the eyes, not only behind, but also up, down, etc. You can see in all directions. Oliver recalled the sensation of observing the world deeply through the Warlock's vision as he answered. The ordinary field of view was gradually consumed by darkness, and what was left were just intangible energies like emotions, mana, life force, etc. When this state was intensified, he could see and feel everything, front and back, left and right, up and down. It seems more useful than I thought. I think so, too. In my master's notes, he said the real charm of black magic is not its powerful firepower, but the penetrating eyes that see emotions and the meticulous technique of using those eyes. Your master is your teacher? Yes. He must have been quite skilled to have taught you. What's he doing now? He has passed away. How come? I killed him. He was trying to kill me, so I believe he'll understand. It was a dizzying story, but Kevin understood. He had seen warlocks several times during his time as a war wizard. They considered power and knowledge as the highest values, and for these, there were numerous cases of disciples killing their masters, and masters killing their disciples. Wizards, too, saw power and knowledge as the ultimate values, but as they operated in the open, they observed some degree of decency, at least pretended to. In contrast, warlocks who operated in the shadows did not observe such norms. Kevin gathered his thoughts and focused again on the lesson. Having such a wide field of view isn't common. How much practice is required to achieve that? I'm sorry, but I don't really know either. I just kept using it and ended up this way. The books say it's best to use it often like a muscle. For now, would you use it for about 2 weeks and then tell me about it? Okay, I will. Kevin answered without hesitation. Regardless of his personal feelings, he trusted Oliver's skills. Upon hearing Kevin's response, Oliver immediately took out a notebook and pen from his bag and systematically recorded the education content and results. Kevin silently watched him. He had felt this way before, but while Oliver seemed very awkward and stifled, he was astonishingly quick at adapting and applying certain things. Almost to a terrifying extent. Ah, don't worry, I won't be writing down your name, Professor. Or, is the recording itself the problem? No, it's fine. I don't plan to interfere in such things while learning. Besides, it seems like we're making decent progress with the opening of the eyes. The next step is handling, right? Handling, it refers to the stage of manipulating emotions with hands. Extracting, controlling the extracted emotions with hands. Fortunately, I've already learned that. That was true. Oliver had taught him in the past. Nevertheless, Oliver confirmed by handing a test tube filled with emotion to Kevin. For now, could you extract the emotion? Kevin immediately started. He opened the cap of the test tube and extracted the emotion. Even though the flow of the emotion was weak, like a small stream. Kevin was slightly taken aback by the less refreshing extraction process than he expected, but calmly gathered the emotion in his hand without rushing, and Oliver also waited for him. There was no rush. I'm done, the extraction is a bit slow. That's okay. Then, can you shape the emotion into a circle? At Oliver's request, Kevin made a circle. Since Oliver had personally taught him this part in the past, he was more proficient than with opening his eyes and extracting. Oliver then sequentially mentioned other shapes like squares and triangles, and Kevin adeptly controlled the emotions and created the shapes. Having confirmed, Oliver took the emotion Kevin held, put it back into the test tube, and asked him to extract it again. Just like before, Kevin slowly extracted the emotions, and Oliver put a finger on his hand to help him get the feel. Swoosh! The extraction was faster and more abundant than before. Oliver removed his hand just at the point where it was slightly disappointing. Do you roughly get how it's done? Yes. Kevin answered while looking at his hand. It wasn't just a casual reply, he really felt like he had grasped the trick. With a little more practice, he seemed to be able to master it completely. I'm glad. Then, I ask you to practice that part on your own as well. Until you're familiar with it. Well, once you've mastered the technique of extracting from a test tube to some extent, you'll need to practice extracting emotions directly from people, but that's a bit tricky. Why is it tricky? Because we don't have someone suitable to practice with. Oliver pointed to the only two people in the training field, himself and Kevin. Can't I extract your emotions? Ah, that would be difficult. Because I don't have many emotions, usually, you won't be able to extract them. That seemed plausible. Although Kevin's eyes might be still weak, even through those eyes, he couldn't see Oliver's emotions. But usually, you can extract your own emotions, but you also need to practice extracting others. Well, if it's okay with you, could we go somewhere together? I think we might get some help. It doesn't matter since I'm learning right now, but help, from whom? There are some people I'm helping a bit, I'll ask them if we can extract some emotions. Chapter 315. His name is Gavin, right? 8:30 in the evening. This was the question that Joe asked Oliver, who had just arrived at District X. Joe looked at the man standing behind Oliver. He was an unremarkable Caucasian man in his 30s, who was none other than Kevin. Kevin, who was disguised with the magic of the Pure Magic faction. Although it was initially suggested that he wear a leather mask, Kevin refused and used magic to hide his appearance. He said it was disgusting to have a black magic item made by peeling human skin. Yes, he is someone I recently met, and I've been teaching him black magic as he's been of help to me. If it's all right, can I teach him here with you? It seems to be more efficient. Ah, Gavin, this is Joe, a senior member of the fighter crew. Please say hello. Kevin, who used the pseudonym Gavin, politely greeted Joe as Oliver had asked. Nice to meet you. Ah, nice to meet you. Joe, quite against the rumors spreading in the back alleys lately, greeted him with good manners. Having recently signed an exclusive contract with crime firm, he was attracting significant attention as the new rising power in the back alleys. Using a unique form of black magic, he had dismantled a foreign gang alliance outside Landa, killed many infamous solvers who opposed crime firm, and even recently faced off against Pinkman and killed 2 of its executives. Despite his reputation for extreme cruelty, he was surprisingly courteous to Kevin in disguise. Kevin soon realized that this was because of Oliver. Even without using his newly acquired Warlock's eye, he could tell that Joe was mindful of Oliver's mood. What was interesting here was that he didn't simply follow Oliver for power or money, like most people in the back alleys. He followed Oliver himself. His gaze and minor body movements made it clear. A rare influence in the back alleys. And not only Joe was under this influence. All the other fighter crew members who were training their stamina, learning black magic, and learning letters from a red-skinned man, they felt the same way towards Oliver. As proof, the atmosphere of the place changed just by Oliver showing his face. A positive tension filled the space, as if soldiers were receiving a triumphant general. It was a difficult influence to create. And Oliver was exerting it. Effortlessly. Kevin silently observed Oliver. Extracting emotions. Yes, Joe. As you know, we need to practice extracting from humans too, don't we? But I can't practice that part if I teach one-on-one. So, can a few of you help Mr. Gavin practice? The more he listened, the more outrageous the request seemed. Extraction of emotions might be harmless if done in small amounts like blood donation, but it's still uncomfortable to be extracted. However, surprisingly, Joe of the fighter crew accepted without hesitation. It was quite remarkable. People in poor areas with bad security are usually scared of such proposals due to their survival instincts. Being in an environment where they could die if they seem even slightly weak, they had no choice. But Joe willingly accepted. It was one of 3 things. Either he felt an overwhelming fear of Oliver, had something to get from Oliver, or had tremendous trust in Oliver. None of these were easy, especially the last one, which was almost impossible. Oliver, who had been conversing with Joe, turned his head towards Kevin and asked politely. Mr. Gavin. Hey. Could you wait for about an hour, no, an hour and a half? I think I need to take care of the fighter crew members first. Kevin, who understood what he was saying, readily nodded. It was Kevin who was regretful about the current situation, and he also wanted to take a personal look around. When Kevin said he would wait as long as it takes, Oliver expressed his gratitude and moved with Joe. In the meantime, Kevin decided to carefully look around to see what District X was like, the worst except for the Y and Z districts. An hour and a half later, Oliver returned on the dot as he had promised. Kevin, who had returned 10 minutes earlier and was waiting, welcomed him. "Are you back?" "Yes, Mr. Gavin. I apologize for the delay." Kevin looked at his wristwatch and nodded. "No, exactly an hour and a half. You're right on time. Was there more work than you expected?" Oliver nodded. Firstly, Oliver provided basic black magic training to the newbies who had recently joined the fighter crew, and formally taught the black magic they would learn in the future, showing the process to executives, including Joe, and demonstrating how to train warlocks. Conducting 2 classes at the same time. Though it was a more strenuous process than expected, Oliver's work was not over yet. He reviewed the test items assigned last time, evaluated the overall level of the fighter crew members once again, roughly determined what to supplement, and even recorded it. In addition, he also checked the black magic of executives and members who felt growth limits, including Joe, and gave advice on the spot about improvement and growth possibilities. It was quite impressive to finish in just an hour and a half. "You're really amazing." "Is that so?" "Yeah." "Oh. Thank you. Professor, I mean, Mr. Gavin. I feel good hearing such words from you." Oliver responded to Kevin's compliment, which was earnest and competent despite giving tough grades as a professor. However, Kevin was just expressing his pure personal impressions, not intending to please anyone. While Oliver was busy for an hour and a half, Kevin, as Oliver's companion, was able to look around, explore the surroundings, and see various things. For instance, the fighter crew, who trained systematically according to military-like discipline. At this point, the thing to note was not their discipline, but their training structure. Temporary discipline could be established with overwhelming charisma or power, but a systematic training structure was a completely different issue. Typically, organizations in slums lacked such systematicity, so even if a powerful individual appeared, there was a clear limit to their growth, but the fighter crew had a fairly systematic system that could be compared to that of Magic Tower. Although it was still at the baby steps level, that alone could be deemed impressive. Training in squads of 8, evaluation items that could systematically manage their training, and black magic practices based on evaluation items, and so on. Even unusually for the slums, several people were learning to read and write in a group. They were learning to read a system that could not be built by headbanging on the bare ground without learning from anyone. Kevin mentioned this and asked if it was Oliver's work. "Yes. It's not grand, but I simply referred to your Magic Combat Basic class and the training manuals referenced from the Elemental and Pure Magic Tower libraries." Sincerely, Oliver replied, not with the false humility favored by the clumsy geniuses of the Magic Tower, but sincerely. Indeed, as Oliver said, the current fighter crew training was just at the level of reference. Test basic fitness and black magic, training to supplement what is lacking. They only took the simple skeleton, but even so, it was amazing. Rather, it could be said that it was even more amazing to bring only the necessary basics without adding awkwardly. It meant that he knew what was the most effective. He thought he was only talented in magic or black magic, but his brain was just as good. Come to think of it, even though his behavior and thinking were stifling, he was capable of getting things done. Kevin belatedly thought of Oliver, who was good at paperwork, tasks, cleaning, research, making coffee, and more. It was scarier than he thought. The innate power and talent of an individual, and the inexplicable characteristic of being able to give talent to others, can establish a large organization. The guy was understanding, applying, and implementing various tasks as well as systems. In the past, Merlin told Oliver that if he put his mind to it, he might be able to create a school with hundreds of years of history or a tower with decades of history by himself. It seemed that he was not wrong about that. No joke, Oliver might be able to create an organization comparable to a tower on his own if he had any ambition or will. And in a short period of time. Overwhelming individual power, the influence that captures the dangerous gangsters in District X, the ability to give talent. Plus, the brain to build a system. It was more strange that it didn't happen. The reason such a situation did not occur was because he had no will or thoughts to do so. It was not a joke, it was a chilling story. Just a semester as a tower staff member and he was this far. Now he understood why his master Merlin entrusted Oliver to him. He felt like he was being devoured just by being around him. Mr. Gavin? Mr. Gavin? Professor. Oliver called Kevin, who was lost in thought. When Kevin finally came to his senses and replied, Oliver asked. Are you okay? Is there a problem? No. Nothing special. Just something to think about. Do you have any difficulties? Not a difficulty. It's just interesting. I see some fighter crew members learning to write from a red person in that building. Oh. Are you talking about Mr. Al? He's an employee at the restaurant I often use. He's teaching the fighter crew how to write at my request. Why did you ask him to teach the fighter crew how to write? It's nothing special. They couldn't do anything because they didn't know how to write. In my opinion, the city should provide public education to teach all citizens at least how to write. For the development of the entire city. Oliver spoke based on his experiences and insights obtained through the newspaper. It coincidentally matched the claims of progressive scholars like Merlin and Kevin, for example. Interesting idea, but what were you trying to say? I have a proposal. Would you be able to hear me out if it's okay? What is it? Would you, if it's okay, not just today, but regularly learn black magic here? At the unexpected proposal, Kevin asked, what's the reason? There's no particular reason. I just thought, since I'm teaching black magic here, it would be more efficient in many ways if you also learn here. We can save each other's time. Oliver spoke his mind honestly, and Kevin didn't think it was a bad idea either. He didn't know if learning together would be more helpful than learning alone, and he could watch and observe what Oliver was doing here right next to him. Okay. Thank you. Then, let's get right to the lesson. There are people here to help. Kevin looked at the tips of Oliver's fingers. The members of the fighter crew, including Joe, were standing there. Those who volunteered themselves as teaching materials. Let's try extracting their emotions once. Just a little bit at first. As you get used to it, gradually increase the amount until you can extract it in one breath at a risky level. Oliver clearly stated the content and goals of the practice. Why does the last part sound a bit risky? It's a bit risky, but it should be okay. Oliver, without any change in his expression, uttered the terrifying words.